morning, everybody. Julio, can you give us a thumbs up if you can hear? All right. So today we have a little bit of a, put this in the middle. We have a little bit of a different format for our mastermind. I'm extremely pleased to announce our new agent development director and broker of record for RES Realty, Mr. Hal Benz. Good morning, Hal.
Hey, good morning, guys. It's a pleasure to be here.
So the format for today is going to be, in the beginning, we're going to talk a little bit about what Hal's passion is. And the second half of this mastermind, we're going to talk about a specific strategy or strategies to get your buyers' offers accepted into homes. So I think that's really critical. We got a lot of ringing as people are logging in. So I'm going to start by, it's a little bit annoying. I'm going to start by asking you, Hal, if you could just give us a brief introduction of yourself to our family here as they all log in on Friday morning.
Hey, well, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here, guys. Brief introduction. I've been in the real estate space for 18 years, coming out of a career in healthcare administration, also as a family therapist, and which is a really good skill set to have when you're working with families buying a home in this market. Being a therapist is a good thing, that's for sure. But I got into real estate in 2003, sold for a number of years. I managed in the Princeton market for another brand, the yellow and black brand. You recognize the colors. And then in 2011, I went to Keller Williams, where I had opened up the Montclair, New Jersey Metro Group office for 3 years, and then moved up into Bergen County for the last 7 or 8 years, where I've been their director of education and coaching. And that's really been my passion, is really helping to grow agent teams and agent businesses.
So in terms of how our paths are parallel, a little random note is Hal's also a resident of Westfield, which made it really convenient to connect with this gentleman.
Yeah.
Our vision for the company was to incorporate a coaching element or an agent development component, and to emphasize growing our brand and our business by not just attracting more talented individuals, but by developing the individuals that we have. And, you know, Hal, to me, it's almost like, you know, if you were getting drafted from a college or a minor league team to the majors, right? Is success dependent upon you, or is it dependent upon that relationship you have with your coach? You know, would Tom Brady be the legendary quarterback if he did not have that leadership?
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, he was not the top draft pick, but look what he became.
Right.
So, you know, I just think that, you know, that emphasis on, you know, developing our team is so critical, and I'm passionate about that, you know, we're, you know, connecting that with our broker record position to make a statement in the industry.
Right. You know, I think, look, coming out of the helping profession, I think it's always been important to me to help people build big lives, right? And look, the purpose of business, I like to say, the purpose of business is to be able to fund your life. And so helping people to kind of really dream big and start to think about what kind of a business plan it takes to make that real, and then learning how to execute that. That's really what I've been focusing on with agents and teams for the past 8 years.
And Hal, when we were talking before, you talked about, I think there were 3 components to a successful coaching relationship. I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot here, but I think that's probably part of your DNA.
Well, you know, look, I think this comes from John Maxwell, right? So I'm also a coach and trainer with the John Maxwell Leadership Organization. And what John always says is there's 3 things to be a leader, 3 questions that have to be answered, and they have to be answered in this order. And the same holds true with coaching. Number 1, do you care about me? You know, do you care about what's important to me? Do you care about my dreams? Are you as invested in making my life everything that I want it to be as I am? Right? Are you willing, or do you care enough to kind of take that journey with me? That's the first question. The second one is, you know, can I trust you? You know, can I trust that you are going to do the things that need to be done to keep me accountable One of the things that I know is that change is hard, right? The pathway from where you are today and where you want to go is a journey called doing something different. And doing something different is scary. And a big part of the coaching relationship is having enough trust that people can be willing to take chances and to even fail, because we learn from our failures faster, frankly, than we learn. You can't succeed your way to success. The only pathway is to fail your way to success. And so a coaching relationship that allows that to happen, but also that builds in an accountability relationship, right? What I've learned as a coach is people will hide where you don't look. And if you let people off the hook and not live up to their full potential and not to do the things that they need to do to create the life that they need to create, then nobody wins, right? So it's, do you care about me? Can I trust you? And then the third part is, can you help me? Right? Do you have the skills? Do you have the knowledge? Do you have the tools to help me grow? And I think those are we talked about this with your leadership group yesterday. I think those are the three elements of what's important in any leadership relationship, and especially a coaching one.
And I think, the emphasis is now we're going to be leaning into not only, you as our team that we're looking to develop and maximize your potential, but I think, our local management team, our local leadership team is going to also be involved in this whole process, because we're all committed to it. And a lot of companies provide lip service to it, but we want to make sure that we have some tangible pathways and quite frankly, some success stories that we can talk about. Yep. One thing that I like to think about, Hal, is like when I'm out with one of our team members is every time I have an engagement with them, I want to make it a story-worthy experience, right? Yep. And I think you mentioned like having a story-worthy life. This part of the process here is critical in that, as you look to grow your career, we want to give you the resource to get to that place, but ultimately you need to do the work. Now, I'm going to lean into a story I've heard about, Tom Brady, and we all know the stories about like Tom Brady and Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan didn't make the varsity team in his high school, and Tom Brady was a very low draft pick into the NFL. But if you study, I actually watched, they had like on the NFL channel one morning, I was bored, and they had the life of Tom Brady. And he's the first person to be in the field house every time. He watches every tape. He studies the most before every game. And you would think that he's such a legend that he probably doesn't need to do that. But I think it's the converse, is that he is a legend because he does do those things.
Years ago, there was a Gatorade commercial that featured Michael Jordan, and it was like, "Be like Mike." And you saw Jordan doing his slam, dunking competitions and flying through the air and being Michael Jordan. And then they would cut away to kids trying to do the same thing, and the ball would be bouncing off their head and all that stuff. But, he was always uncomfortable with that campaign, because he says, if you really want to be like me, you get up and you get in the gym first, you work out more. And that's what it is. It's the preparation. It's not the flamboyancy.
It's not the glory. The glory comes after the discipline is exercise, right?
Right.
So one of the things that I think this group on this meeting might be thinking is, I'm a newer agent, I'm a top producing individual, I'm a team leader, or I'm a team member.
Yeah.
And, how do we get our arms around, providing a consistent pathway to those, different tiers or those different groups?
Yeah. Well, I think it's done differently. I think it all starts with goal setting, right? We've got to be real clear on where are we now? Where do we want to get to? What's the gap? And how are we going to bridge that? I think with teams, a lot of it really comes down to, with the team leads, is really thinking about the systems and the way that they're approaching leverage, and the kinds of standards that they're creating within their team to really deliver the kind of experience that allows you to grow. For solo agents and for folks who are newer, it's really getting into the right business habits. I mean, at the end of the day, it's your habits that dictate your success. And what coaching a lot is a lot about is helping people to think differently so that they can do the things that they need to do to create the habits. It's been said that life is a marathon, but in many ways it's a sprint. right? It's a series of sprints that require you to bring a certain amount of discipline to your day and a certain amount of behavioral discipline until you develop the right habits that get you to ongoing success. And that's the biggest challenge that I think we have in sales in general. This is not a real estate issue. That's a sales issue. I think we get so caught up in the minutia of servicing clients that we don't continue to develop the right disciplines of growing our businesses.
So standards and habits, right?
Standards and habits, right? Big time.
And I think, these, I would call them foundational principles, I think apply to, the newer agent looking to make a name or build their business, the middle tier agent looking to get to that top business, a team leader or a team member. I think that the standard is applicable across the board. It's just a matter of how do we avail ourselves to service the different groups in a sustainable way.
Right.
I want to just take a minute and ask you to, tell us a little bit about some of your prior successes that you're proud of, or brag for a moment about some of the people that you've helped, because I can say that I've heard a lot of excitement when your name came to the company. So you don't need to mention names, but maybe just tell a little bit about one or two things that you're most proud of.
I think some of the things that I've been the most proud of through the years is really helping agents believe in themselves that a bigger life was possible, right? And once they really believe in themselves enough to kind of put the right systems in place, things really grow. I remember an agent a number of years ago that I had recruited from a small mom and pop to come and work with us, who was doing well as a solo agent. I mean, she was $20 to $25 million in volume every year, solid agent. But every day was like her hair was on fire. She didn't have any administrative support. She was trying to do everything on her own. And she didn't really have any focus in terms of her business. And, within 2 years, we got her to $80 million in volume. Other teams that have kind of been bumping along that 80, $90 million in volume that are trying to figure out, what do I need to do to break through? Ironically, the thing that's the biggest breakthrough for the biggest teams, and it's so counterintuitive to so many agents, is that real estate is such a hyper-local sport. One of the biggest challenges and the caps that happens for a lot of teams and limits teams' growth is that they're trying to do too much, meaning that they haven't really picked a lane. If you look at the top performing teams and agents in the MLS, and I've studied the MLSs for years, you're going to find that when you get into that top rarefied air, the top 10, where you're looking at hundreds of units every year, what you're going to find is 40, 50, 60% of the volume that they do is just in one town. They go deep and not wide. And I think that's the mistake that a lot of teams make and Gary Vaynerchuk, I don't know how well you know Gary V, but Gary Vaynerchuk, who has been one of the marketing gurus of our generation, I think, has always said that we need to go deeper rather than wider. And the breakthrough thing that has helped a lot of teams kind of catapult into that next level is to figure out where's their lane. And the game that they play is dominant market share. The game that they don't try to play is cover every part of the world. And the difference, the reason for that, I think, is that, look, this is a competitive business and you've got to be an expert. Real estate has always been a local service industry, right? But there is just so much competition that you really can't be deeply expert in every market in northern New Jersey. You just can't. I come out of healthcare, and I use this analogy a lot. You can look at two different doctors, and one of them graduates #1 in the top medical college in the United States and practices general medicine. The other one graduates last in their college, worst medical school, cardiothoracic surgeon. Who's making more money?
Specialist.
The cardiothoracic surgeon, because people don't pay for generalized knowledge. They pay for expert knowledge. And so figuring out, and this holds for all agents, figuring out where is the niche that you want to dominate and going super deep and making sure that that niche is big enough, right? And most of the time it's geographically defined. Sometimes it's defined by product type, luxury markets, country club markets, whatever. But that's been one of the biggest game changers for a lot of the teams that I've worked with, when they've really decided where were they going to zone in on and really become dominant and kick that up to the next level. that's where they go from 80 million to 150.
So, when you talk about going deep instead of wide, when you're going wide, you're chasing a lot of shiny objects and you don't catch many. I think, going deep and doubling down on the things are really going to pay huge dividends. And sometimes we need a coach or an advocate to reinforce those practices. Otherwise, we get some clickbait while we're online and we click on it, we go down this path, and it takes us away from what we really know we need to be doing.
Right.
I want to just mention just a couple of things I think are relevant. Number one is, when I went to Tony Robbins' Business Mastery, I spent 7 days, and he's very intense. Like, you start at like 7 and you don't finish till 2 a.m. some days. And you're like, how are people even getting here the next day? Tony Robbins, in that session, one of the things that I took away was you become the average of the people you associate with. And I think that as we break through levels and people are getting to that 80 million, $100+ million range, I think having a connection and an association with them is going to be powerful and irreplaceable. And then the second takeaway I had, which, you might say that's crazy that you had to go there to figure this out, but it was just ingrained in your head that business is math. Okay. There's no mysteries to what goes on here. We can predict the outcome if we know, the effectiveness of what we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, and you go back to that first point of you become the average. That was Jim Rohn, who actually was one of Tony Robbins' early mentors, right? Jim Rohn has always said your life is this average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And when I say that, people oftentimes go and say, I think I need to go fire some of my friends, right? But the point is, one of the things that I really believe in is masterminds. And there's this kind of a mastermind where we just get together and talk. But, there is so much talent in an organization like this. And when we get talented agents together and come from this mindset of abundance that says, look, there's enough business for everyone. And we can all grow together. And if I can kind of share some of my struggles or some of my successes or some of the things that I'm thinking about, that I'm not threatened if you kind of know what's going on inside my head, that creates a synergy where people really grow and grow to a high level. And I found especially for top producing agents to kind of create that kind of an internal network is irreplaceable.
And when you mention that, I think there's also, when you have that type of affiliation and contribution, there's the law of reciprocity.
Oh, for
which,
sure.
Everybody always focuses on the 1 or 2 times where they've been burnt by that. But in my experience, the law of reciprocity is just so powerful. Like, sometimes when you give without expecting, you get in abundance in return.
Right. I mean, for sure. And you know what? You're going to get burned. And that happens, but I say to people sometimes, you ever burn the roof of your mouth with a slice of pizza? Did you stop eating pizza? I mean, at the end of the day, you get burned and you move on, right? But that law of reciprocity is real. It's powerful.
So I'm gonna ask the group here, just so that we can get a little bit more engaged. If you're not in your bathrobe, if you could put your camera on, so we can have feel a little bit closer as we're coming out of this pandemic here, and Hal can get to see some of the great personalities that we have here. If we can maybe open it up for a couple of questions, then I'd like to wrap up the first half by talking about how we're going to approach rolling out this exciting program. So does anybody have any questions? I have you all on mute. If you want to unmute yourself and feel free to ask us a question.
Some chat things there.
And Mr. Garver, can you read the chat for us? Robert Garver, if you could monitor that for me, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, the only thing in the chat right now is Maggie saying that she was there at Tony Robbins.
Okay. So anybody have any questions, or we'll just continue forward? I guess we're doing such a great job. Nobody has any.
It's like so plans to stump the chump, man. This is a good game. You can get me now.
So in terms of how the program is going to work for people who are in it, initially, we're going to focus on teams and individuals that are growing their business throughout the entire company. And we broke them down into, I guess, $2 to $6 million individuals. And we had to kind of create some buckets. And we have $6+ million producers, and then we have teams. So those are the three buckets that we're focusing on to begin. And within teams, we have, a pathway for team leaders, and then also for team members.
For team members, right? And the vision would be to really work with both, right? To work with the team leaders to help get a sense of where you want to take this team to work with the individual team members to help them kind of be more accountable to the execution of that plan. And then on the individual side, again, what I find is different folks need different things. When you get to that 6 million and above, 10, 15, whatever, it's different issues that you're learning. It's different leverage needs. It's different standards that you need to start putting in place than when you're bumping around, 2 million, right? And yet there's definitely needs along the way. So it is what we're planning on doing is a combination of individual one-on-one coaching, combination of coaching. We've even got a pathway for folks who are newer and really in the growth phase of their business, sort of the $0 to $2 million level, where there would be group coaching available to help, again, get the right habits in place to start to build momentum, to let that flywheel catch so the business can really start to grow.
Fantastic. And in terms of, the business model that we're doing is the investment. We as a company have made a financial commitment and investment in this practice, because I believe it. If I could have only two choices, Hal, which is if we were to double the business by, adding the same amount of people that we have and doing the same amount of business, or taking the people we have and doubling their business, I would take the latter every day.
I would as well.
And that's really, why, our broker of record, our forward-facing member, is not a problem solver. They're not a recruiter. That they're in the agent development business to make a statement to our commitment to developing the individuals to the maximum that you want to be developed to. If you're doing a certain amount of business, you're happy, that's totally okay. We just want to make sure that that there's a resource available to you if the time comes that you want to avail yourself of that. And for me, I don't have the experience that Hal has of taking people up to this level. I'm a creative learner myself, and I learned so much by working with this group.
Yep.
And then our Mastermind series has basically been a extension of, what I've learned from helping people in any given week, or what am I seeing as the trends that are challenging our agents and trying to address them in a group. And as you can see, we're almost 100 strong here. So, it's
impressive for a Friday morning. It's encouraging to see that.
So it's and that's basically, because I'm here to serve the needs of the group, and, solving problems gives me a format to share that with, 450 people, whether it's live or on our recorded series.
And, I just go back to that thing about growth though. And I think when people realize that there's a resource and a pathway, that they begin to believe they can dream bigger. I think one of the things that happens is if you don't know how to get there and you don't have a guide, a lot of people just accept mediocrity. And that's sad to me, right? Because I don't believe God put anybody on this earth to be mediocre, right? I think that we're here to live a big life and to make a big impact. And everybody gets to decide for themselves what that looks like. No judgment on the size of that, but we're here. I'm here, and we're all here, I think, to try to kind of create the roadmaps and the supports to be the guides to help you get where you want to go.
So
just to follow up, Rob, there are a couple more comments in the chat, and they're welcoming Hal and liking what he has to say, and the information so far is really great.
Thanks, guys.
Fantastic. So when this program, when it kicks off, is going to be unlike any other coaching program. Some of our competitors have different models for coaching, and some of them are pay as you go models, right? And maybe they'd be at a discount or not.
Right.
Some of them are revenue share models, right? Where you pay a percentage of all the business that you do. I looked at it in my typical different way of looking through the lens, and I said, I want to provide an opportunity where, Hal is made available to everybody, and the compensation would be based upon growth only.
Right.
So, if you want to talk a little bit about the model.
Here's and look, as a coach, I've coached in lots of different models, and I've had lots of coaches and paid different models. One of the things that I believe is that unless people have an investment, then coaching doesn't really work that well, right? And that investment is an investment of time, but it's also an investment of dollars. And yet, what I've always believed is that people need to know that I have skin in the game, that my compensation is tied to your success. And in fact, the way that we kind of thought about this comp model, we called it a success fee rather than anything else. And so what happens is we look at the quarterly production, and the fees are only paid on the growth, right? So if an agent does, just to make the numbers easy, if an agent does $20 million in first quarter 2020 and $8 million in 2021 quarter, then they didn't have growth. They went backwards. There's no fee. But if they went from 10 million to 15 million, the fee would only be on the difference of the 15 million, on the difference of the 5 million rather. It's on the growth. So if you're not growing, then I'm not feeding my family either. And I've always wanted that kind of a coaching model where we succeed together, because I think that gives us all the right incentives, right? I've got an interest in your success that goes beyond just the beneficence of being coached, right? This is how I feed my family as well. So we win together.
And when I looked at some of the other coaching programs, how they had, if it was like a revenue model, there was compensation for mediocrity.
Yeah.
And I think Hal and I both were pretty connected in not wanting to be compensated for mediocrity.
Right.
And let's see.
Hal, can you explain to everyone that there's a cap on what they would be paying?
Okay, so what will happen is, and I don't know whether we want to get into all the minutiae of all the different levels, we can talk about that at a different level, but what will happen is that the success fee charged on the growth caps at a certain amount per year, right? And so it's not going to be on forever and ever. And in fact, the caps are significantly lower than what you would be paying if you went and joined a Tom Ferry program for a year. So I think that it's a really big win for everybody, I think.
I only asked because I had gotten 2 texts about it.
Yeah, no worries. Good.
Yep. So transparently, I think it goes from what, 2,500 to 7,500.
It goes from 2,500 to 7,500, depending on whether you're on a team, whether you're the team lead, and then it's about 5,000 for solo agents. That would be where that cap would be.
So we're being fully transparent. The thing that I hope, Hal, is that as we sign and engage people into this process, that we can fight off that 80-20 rule and get a much higher success rate, maybe by inviting people in more selectively, or doubling down on getting that commitment. Yeah.
And again, I the way I always look at coaching and the expense of coaching, I never look at it as a fee as much as an investment. And I'm here to tell you, if you're going to invest in your business, invest in yourself. That's the best place to invest for sure. And when that investment is only paid on successful growth, then I think it's a win for everyone. And again, I think what will happen, and what I've seen happen in other coaching programs that I've created and run, is that it does start to build momentum. Once people start to see that others around them are really starting to grow and earn more money, then people want a piece of that action.
So I'm going to conclude this part of it by just saying that when I shared this concept with our leadership team, a couple of our office leaders came to me and said, Rob, did Hal figure out that this is like the best market ever? He's trying to take his fee off the top of that. And ironically, we had a discussion about that. And, we really, believe that it doesn't matter where the base is. If you're doing the right activities, that we can build upon this.
Look, there's hot markets and there's cold markets, and there's people that win in every one. What you have to do is to know where the market is going and know how to pivot. And look, Wayne Gretzky famously said that, right? A good hockey player goes to where the puck is. A great hockey player goes to where the puck is going to go. I think what we try to do in coaching is to decide, where is my niche, and where's the market going, and how do I stay ahead of it, so that when markets change, I don't lose my skin, right? That's the name of the game. And look, here's the thing: when markets shift, and this market will shift. This is an unsustainable market right now. And it is going to shift. And there's a huge shadow inventory that's growing of distressed properties that are coming. And all those things are real. And yet, when markets shift, that's the time to grow market share. That's the time where most agents throw their hands up in the air and say, the sky is falling. And top agents, that's where they double down. And the market share you take in that kind of a shift is market share that you never give up.
And it's been my experience that I watch some of the top producers, many of them in our organization, good market, bad market. When you're on that growth phase, the market is insignificant to the trajectory that you're on. You're just getting more market share when the market cracks.
Well, and the reason for so much of that is that the driving fundamentals of at least residential real estate is that people need a place to live, and families grow and families constrict, and that doesn't change regardless of the market conditions. How you play the game changes, but the opportunities are always there.
So now I want to shift to a really hot topic, which is, how do we serve our clients and continue to build our brand by getting buyer side transactions put together and keep them together. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my perspective and, some of the things I'm seeing in the market and why we're seeing the, crazy numbers of over ask price that we're all hearing about, or these, multiple offer scenarios. Number one is pricing. And I think we've been a big proponent of looking at pricing three different ways. How I, like to call it the traditional way, where we try to, triangulate on what the market value of a particular home is and what we think it's going to land for. And I think many agents have been using that strategy for years. They come to I'm going to say a listing presentation, and I call it a conversation. Now they come to a presentation, the traditional agent, and here's the CMA and Hal, this is what your house is worth, right? And most cases, what does the seller think, Hal?
Oh, I got gold nails in my steps. My house is worth way more than that.
So my house is worth, so let's say, we're saying the house is worth $500,000 based upon the comps, and even using the aggressive market that we're in, the seller almost always says, I have gold nails, my house is worth 600. And where do you think that listing normally comes into the brokerage at?
Yeah, it usually comes in the high fives, probably,
or somewhere in between. In between the seller's expectation and our market value, right? Now, I've done some studies here, Hal, and I've always believed that people will land in the middle. So, absent giving a third choice, the middle is still overpriced, right?
Okay.
The strategy I like to talk about is we can price your house auction style, where we're going to have competitive bids intentionally. We're going to intentionally price it slightly below the market. And the third way that we can price it, Hal, is we can price it lottery style. And lottery style is we just pick a number and we hope to win the lottery. Have you ever won the lottery, Hal?
I have not.
So in looking at these three different strategies, we can actually take historical numbers and show what the result is. And, when you have it lottery, auction, and market, what happens to be in the middle there, Hal?
Probably market.
So, I found that in more cases than not, the market is the mean that people move towards. And a lot of times, because of the performance of a auction style pricing, I find some people are like, hey, let's go with that strategy, even though the original intent of adding that was just to define the middle as the market and give that our area. So words matter, right? Strategies matter. And if you don't have a story backed by some data, you know, you're going to be the guy that splits the difference and takes, or the woman that splits the difference and takes it overpriced, but maybe not as much. And I totally reject the agents that come in and say, Rob, you know what? I got Hal the sign saying that if it doesn't sell in 2 weeks, we're going to cut the price. And, you know, at that point, you're already coming into the market from weakness. Yeah. Right. And I was actually out at somebody's listing with them a week ago Sunday, and they had an expectation that their home was worth about 100,000 more in the 600 range. Yeah. And when we're strategizing, you know, I said, if we take this higher price and it doesn't sell, what are we going to do? We're going to cut the price. And I said, if we come in with a lower price and it doesn't move, maybe we even raise it by 10,000, because what is the market going to expect if they see that we raised it 10,000 in this crazy market, Hal?
Talk to me.
They're going to think that there's excessive competition to it, right?
Could be. Yeah.
So if I was given the two choices, I would rather be in a position where, you know, if I'm stale 50,000 or 100,000 below where they wanted to be, that I'd rather even raise the price. And, you know, we'd actually secured that listing. I don't know if it's on the market yet, but I'm pretty optimistic that, you know, having a strategy where you're not cutting the price in one of the hottest markets is a better strategy.
Right. I mean, to have to cut price in a market like this. Look, there's another thing though that I think is really important, and is if we allow people to overprice their house, then we allow them to stigmatize their house. Once the market has rejected a house at its price, there's a difference between market value and sale price, right? Market value is what it's worth. Sale price is what you get. And when we allow people to overprice the house, we get, it doesn't respond. And what happens is the market begins to feel that there's a problem with the house. And then we will never be able to get the sale price that we could have gotten had we not let them do that in the first place. And look, for most Americans, their home equity is their largest investment they've got. And I think if we allow people to hurt themselves in that way without learning how to become better consultants, because look, sales is influence. It's influencing people to make decisions and then take actions, right? It's just like anything else. But if we allow them to take the wrong actions that stigmatize their property to a point where they have reduced their chances of ever getting the full equity out of it, then we've hurt them. And that's one of the reasons why we have licenses.
So taking the flip side of the coin, Hal, to now we're working with buyers, right? Yeah. And we go out there and, you know, last weekend I was helping somebody put together a transaction for a mid 400s, low 400s price in Essex County. Yep. Not a very admirable place to be in this market. Made appointments on Thursday for about 12 properties. 4 or 5 of them were canceled because they were already pending. Right. I mean, this is the type of market that you're in there. So walking through this journey with, you know, our team here is always enlightening to me and helping me to, you know, formulate new visions and plans on how we might succeed in the market. So most of the time, you know, when we're out there, we're showing relatively new listings to the consumers or the buyers that we have, sharing with them that, you know, old dogs that didn't sell and the ratio of sale to list price is not relevant by looking at the entire market. You have to look at the market that you're in, which is homes that are likely to sell in the first week, and educating the buyer and maybe even saying to them, how, you know, are you comfortable entering into a aggressive market like this? Yeah,
look, that's a really important question for a lot of levels. I mean, I think one of the things that I ask buyers right out of the gate is, do you see yourself as a competitive person? First of all, because most people say yes, right? And then we can have a conversation with what competitive looks like in this market. But if people don't have the DNA to be in this market right now, if they don't have the stomach for it, then look, then we have to start looking at different inventory. Then We talk about that there's buyer's markets and there's seller's markets and agent markets, right? This is an agent market. This is a coaching agent's market. And what a coach does is prepares their player and put them in a position to win. And so if you are going to take a buyer who doesn't have the stomach to get into a bidding war, out into competitive bidding wars again and again and again, you're going to lose them, right? And they're not going to get a home. So if they're not ready to play, then we've got to look at a different tier of inventory. Maybe we look at the stuff that's been rejected by the market and see if we can negotiate a deal. But the other part of that, I think, is really important, is because I don't think buyers have a full appreciation of just how competitive it is and what they have to do. They see themselves as competitive, and then yet when it's go time, they're not giving it their all. They're not leaving it on the field. And here's what happens. We sometimes have to challenge that. And what I've learned is if you challenge people with their own words of their own self-definition, hey, wait a second, you told me that you're competitive, and let's take a look at what's going on here. Is that what competitive looks like for you? When you challenge people with their own words, there's an opportunity for self-awareness. When you don't use their own words and you say, look, I don't think you're playing big enough, I don't think you're going strong enough, then at that moment, you're just another pushy salesperson, and they lose interest in you. So setting that right out in this market, and that really is why in this market, we really need to be doing buyers consultations. We have got to be taking the time to get our buyers prepared, because it is a total mindset shift right now. This is not find your dream house market. This is find a house market. What I tell people all the time is we used to, as agents, we used to help buyers fall in love with a home so that they would feel compelled to make an offer. What I've seen statistically in numbers that I had run recently in my previous company is that the average buyer's agent is telling us that their buyers are putting in anywhere between 8 and 12 offers before they get one to stick. And if you fall in love with your dream house and lose it 8 different times, 10 different times, that is emotionally exhausting. And so what we've learned is the game right now is not to fall in love, or at least to fall in love slower. The game right now is to buy a house and build a home over time. Homes are made of experiences and dreams, and that comes with time. Let's not worry about the dream home right now. Let's buy a house, as much house as we can buy in the community that we want to be in, and we'll build it out into our dream home over time, which changes the mindset a little bit in terms of how to play the game, right?
So that's an interesting point. So if most people are making 8 to 12 bids, I would say that that's probably consistent with most of the listing surveys I have, where we're receiving 5 to 30 offers on a property that we introduced to the market.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing, or the shift that I'm looking at, is I would say that there are some agents that are putting in 60 offers and getting 0 transactions. And there are other agents that are putting in 2 offers and getting 1 accepted transaction, or 4 offers and getting 1. And I think that's where strategy matters.
It matters a lot. And even, some of the top teams that I've worked with amazing buyers agents. I mean, a lot of the buyers agents are telling me that, look, their conversion rate has gone from 80% to 35%. And that's just the reality of this market. And I think part of that is because this is an emotionally driven market. This is a market that, look, there's a lot of reasons for it, I think. I think people, especially when it comes to residential real estate, there is so much emotion in this market right now because people are exhausted with COVID. People are exhausted with politics. People are exhausted with any number of things, and they're just feeling so out of control and so desperate to take control of something that they're just going so all in on a house. I think COVID has created this nesting need for a lot of folks. And look, I think what happens is there is an awful lot of money out there. And, even when people go big and they give their very best offer, sometimes the competition is just too good. It's just too big.
So I look at, competition as something that's going to, challenge me to stand above the crowd. Right.
Right.
And in this example from last weekend, we had somebody who was basically doing the Hail Mary pass and saying, we have 1 day to find a house, because if we don't if we're not able to close by the end of June, we're going to renew our lease, and we're going to just consider ourselves, it wasn't meant to be for us to be a homeowner. Hal, have you ever heard that?
More than once.
So I had said, we're going to look at some properties. I worked with the agent. They showed them 10 or 11 properties in one day. I was working with them in presenting the offers to the agents. I felt pretty good when they came back and sat with me here in the office. I'm like, all right, here's the comps. We came in, sadly enough, 10,000 above the ask price on the highest sale of a 2-bedroom condo in the community that I've seen. And I thought we'd get a counter offer, and it was somebody that I knew. Sad to say, 15 minutes after sending it with a text message, I got a call saying, Rob, take your client somewhere else. We have an offer 60,000 above. It's never going to appraise. It's a stupid deal. And I had to sit with the buyers and the agent, and we said, we're going to change strategy, folks.
Yeah. And
we actually submitted 3 simultaneous offers. I had spoken to all the listing agents to try to build some rapport and relationship. And we wound up getting 2 of those 3 accepted, and we actually had a choice. And we made a decision. I actually need to give a shout out to Bill Crowell. He put us in touch with a great attorney that got us out of attorney review in 3 hours. And because they had 2 accepted, I was like, I know how this can end, Hal.
Yeah.
They can wind up with none, right?
They could.
So I said to them, look, we need to make a decision here. And whatever decision we need to make, we need to get out of attorney review today, because 2 can become 0 quickly. And we retained an attorney that wrote the attorney letter within 15 minutes of getting the signed agreement, and got us out of attorney review before the end of the business day. And I will tell you that the agent that we worked with on the other end, Cash, he was excited about it because, he didn't want to have to sell that house 3 times, right? And his seller was on this emotional pathway. What if I get another offer? Maybe I should wait. And we wound up getting the property that they wanted. We wound up getting them out of attorney review. We had to talk about conditions in advance, right? Because we didn't want to have things killed during the attorney review. And in this particular scenario, we bid 22,000 above ask price, and we said that we'd be willing to pay 11,000 more than it appraises. All negotiated in advance within hours in that attorney review letter. And I do believe that there's going to be a new homeowner in Belleville before the end of this month as a result of that, unyielding belief that this is going to happen and finding a way.
Yeah. And again, I go back to the importance of the consultation. I think sometimes when things are moving quickly, we skip that step, but we need to have a game plan, right? And if we're going to put our buyers in a position to win, we've got to know what the game plan is. What are the risks that they're willing to take? How far over would they be willing to go over the appraised value? What, can they make up? What limitations would they put around home repair? Look, at the end of the day, I think in building rapport with the listing agent, a lot of times the question is, look, what's the most important thing that the sellers need to see? And what's the thing that they're most afraid of? And then how can we try to eliminate those fears for them, right? And when, again, what buyers just need to understand is they're going to have to take on some risk. And so with that said, then we need to work with a team that gets that. We need an attorney who understands that this is what we're willing to do and how we can get out of review quickly. We need home inspectors who understand that buyers understand that they're not buying a house in perfect condition and are not going to scare the heck out of them over that, right? We need lenders who are going to be willing to pick up the phone and talk to the listing agent to vouch for the credibility and the strength of these buyers. We got to have that infrastructure in place because things move too fast. It can't be figured out on the fly. That team's got to be ready to go and know what the rules are, what your expectations are from them as an agent in order to get this to work.
And I think about
Rob, if I could just interject for a second, because there are 2 questions that center right around what you've just been talking about. First of all, people would like to know who the attorney is that got you out of attorney review.
So that was Adolfo D. Martinez, a referral of Bill Crowell by way of Dan Merlino. Great guy.
Okay. And then someone else is asking, the statistics on how many offers agents are writing now before they're successful? Is there some place that they can find that statistic?
No, probably not. That was sort of some internal stats in my previous company that we were just tracking internally.
Hey, Rob, I got a question. Hal. So how do you address or handle the client who doesn't listen? And basically, if you have the conversation, the consultation ahead of time with them, and then they get into these competitive situations and they still will not do what it takes to secure the property, right? But they'll get on the merry-go-round and keep doing it. So for example, if you have somebody who is unwilling to waive inspections or unwilling to waive appraisals or go 15,000 over, how are you addressing that, specifically? And when's the walk away point, do you think, because they could be viable buyers, they just may be stubborn and, wasting time, dealing with
or they could be afraid, right? And it's all of those things. And so, I think it's a complicated line, but, I go back to the idea of being a coach and what does a coach do? They review the game film. And so after we go through and we get blown up and nothing gets accepted, we got to go back and take a look and start to say, okay, let's take a look at that strategy. What could we have done differently? And it's not a telling moment. It's an asking moment, right? These conversations are conversations of self-discovery, because when people are afraid, and that's largely what it is, they're afraid that they're going to spend too much. They're afraid that they're going to make a bad decision. When they get caught up in fear, they can't hear your logic, right? And so what we need to do is to get better at asking questions in terms of, what could we have done differently? Do you think if we did this, it could have been received differently, and let them become self-discovering to those things? But here's the thing at the end of the day, from a coaching standpoint, is when you review the game film and you've pointed out what needs to happen and players don't improve, then they sit on the bench. At some point, you've got to decide, is that the highest and best use of your time to kind of work with somebody? And we go back to, do you really have the stomach to buy a home in this market? And if you don't, that's okay. I'm going to be in the business when the market shifts and you're going to be ready to go. That's another thing. I had a conversation with an agent up in the Bergen County market who's one of the bigger players, and she and I are good friends. And we were talking about how sometimes you've got to be willing to let buyers have a timeout, right? Because it is taxing to lose house after house after house. And sometimes people need to take a break. And her response to that is a lot of agents push and say, no, you can't take a break. We've got to get this done now. Interest rates are great, all that sort of stuff. But that comes off as commission breath for a lot of folks. And they hear you as being pushy, and they hear you as being more interested in your commission than their needs. And her response is, look, I've been in the business 20 years. I'm going to be in the business when you're ready. If you need to take a break, that's fine. And to your point, Daniel, if a buyer's not prepared to do what they need to do to win in this market, that's okay. But you may not have earned the right to my time. And that's a business decision that you have to make. And what drives that, to be honest with you, is how deep is your pipeline? When your pipeline isn't deep at all and you've got nobody else, then you're going to be chasing that person around forever and be frustrated out of your mind. When your pipeline is thick and deep with qualified buyers, then you can move on. And if you really want to do something, you can refer that unmotivated buyer to somebody that you don't like and catch a referral fee if they get lightning in a bottle. Who knows?
So Hal, in the example that I worked on last Sunday, I would say on the surface, this buyer was an unmotivated buyer. They were unrealistic for several months with other agents. They had unsuccessful strategy entering the market. They were moving from Brooklyn to New Jersey. Yep. And I think you hit the nail on the head that they were fearful.
Yeah.
They didn't understand the market, right? And the best gift that I got was when we got a quick rejection to our initial offer, and I had it on speakerphone. And hey, what happened with that offer? Oh, thanks for getting to us. It was a really good offer. However, we have an offer for 50,000 more, and it was on the speakerphone. They heard it. And I'm like, okay, so you need to be in by the end of this month. You're already underwritten by, our lending partner. You're good to go. How are we going to approach this? So we immediately changed the strategy of negotiating the property based upon that history. And I think if we didn't get blown out of the water that badly, I don't know that we would have been
Yeah.
successful with 3 competitive offers.
Maybe not, right? And we always hear sometimes that people need to get burned once to kind of get a feel for it or whatever. But, I do think, though, that we have to redefine our role with buyers in a market like this, right? I think a lot of times as buyers agents, we put ourselves out there as our value proposition is I have the relationships, I have the ability to get you what you want. And I don't think you can promise that in this market. I think the value proposition is I can prepare you better than anyone to do what needs to be done to win in this environment. And yet sometimes, even with the best preparation, the competition is going to be stronger. You can be a really good major league hitter until you go up against Mariano Rivera. Sometimes the competition is just better than you. And that's just the nature of where it is right now. And so sometimes it's lack of motivation. But if buyers are leaving it all on the field and they're doing everything that they need to do and they're losing, so be it. I think you look at athletics. I think athletes recognize that all the time and say, look, we just got outplayed today. But when buyers are holding back out of their fear, that's on us to help figure out how do we coach them through that? How do we help them understand what that fear is and how do we mitigate that, right?
So
Rob, I just had one last point on that. Totally understand and agree, with counseling them after the fact. But I personally feel as though that in some cases buyers are being irrational with certain things, and if they are waiving inspections and or appraisals, then, that may not be the best strategy, that I can genuinely say for my client, because if I wouldn't do it for myself, right, and my family, I wouldn't advise it for my client. And to have somebody come in and say, listen, we lost these 2 other houses because of X, Y, and Z, and you guys didn't waive your appraisals. So if you guys want to deal in this market, and if that is really genuinely the point, if they're not listening to us or they're not going above asking and they're not paying what the price that they need to pay for the home, I get that. That's on us and them. However, if you're competing against somebody that's coming in going, listen, I'm only going to be in the house for 2 years. I don't really care, if this home holds up to the test of time. I got to get in there. I'm going to waive inspections. I'm going to waive appraisals, and I'm going to pay over asking for it. That's the situation that I'm finding with my competitive buyers, up to 900 to $1 million, even higher, that are still going into that scenario. Like, that's where it's tough, because I feel as though it's not so much a matter of just reviewing what happened. It's a matter of combating that competition. And that's kind of where I feel like.
Look, I think you're right. I think, to clarify that point, it's really, look, it's about risk management. It's about helping buyers decide what level of risk they're comfortable taking and what level of risk they're not comfortable taking. And then going to the threshold. Every offer in this market has to be your highest and best. And if you're going highest and best to the threshold of your comfort level, and you're competing against that other cash buyer who doesn't care, who's waiving everything that's out there, that's a tough one, right? That's a tough one. There's no really
time for a break,
and it may be time for a break. It may be time to do, to look. One of the things that I've also found is coaching buyers to not shop at the top of their qualification range, which is a mindset shift. Because look, if you're qualified to 800,000 and you're looking at homes at 775, those are likely to go into the 9s, and you can't compete anymore. And so how do we get people to play the game that they can win? That 800,000 buyer may have to start looking for things that are in the 6s and low 7s, and to decide what's the gotta have. And for most buyers, it's buy as much of the community that you can. We can add to the house. We can't move it, right? Buy as much of the community as you can. You buy a house now, you can build it out to become your dream home over time. But if you're constantly going up against people, and in this emotionally driven market where there's a ton of money out there, and there's people who are just saying, I'll do whatever it takes, we just got to find ways to put ourselves in different scenarios. The idea of multiple bids is a good one, right? But I also think one of the big strategies that has worked is really counseling buyers to look at a price point in the market where they can be the dominant offer and not get blown up by the dominant offer.
So there was language that you used, Dan, that I'm going to push back on a little bit, and I'm going to say that it's not your or our prerogative to say this is something I would do for my family. It's our prerogative to educate them on what the risks are associated with moving forward, And maybe it's, you have an inspection and you're not going to ask for anything, but if there's anything with any of the major systems, you have the right to cancel the contract, which makes it more marketable when you're entering into that transaction. And I think the other piece, Dan, and believe me, I was of the same mindset as you until I've seen, people having regret that they didn't buy a house. And this couple here was at their last leg. That was the last possible day they were going out house hunting before they renewed their lease. And I think, July 4th, when they're in their new home, they're not going to be saying, I'm really concerned that I might have overpaid. Yeah. They're going to say, wow, I'm really excited about our life in New Jersey, that we're not renewing our lease in Brooklyn and we're where we want to be. I think that's the decision that only they can make, Dan. And that, we need to be honest always, but we can't, impose our beliefs on our buyers. You know what I mean? Like, to be honest, we don't know where the market's going. It's like if you wanted to go buy a share of Tesla and your stockbroker said, I can't sell it to you, it's too high right now. You go find another stockbroker and buy that share if you're committed to doing it. Yeah.
And to add to that, I think the thing I think it's always important to remember is the transaction is a stepping stone to a lifestyle change. People buy and sell residential real estate, not necessarily for transactional reasons. I know that we're using right now the strength of the market to try to find inventory to say what number would compel you to put your house on the market, and that gets very transactional. I get that. And yet, people buy and sell homes because there's a change in their life that necessitates a change. And if we can help people focus on we've accomplished that goal and less focused on what had to happen in the transaction to make that happen, I think people have less remorse.
And
Rob, just a couple of things in the chat. Several agents have mentioned that what they find is very helpful is to have all of the necessary people in place at the time that you make an offer. Have your attorney lined up, have your inspector lined up, your lender lined up, and to make the listing agent aware of the fact that all of these people are in place, we're ready to go. And by the way, can you tell me, when do the sellers want to close?
I think in most markets that's kind of critical, but now there's an elevated necessity for that. And are there any other questions in the chat, Robert, before I just give my final closing thought? And if there's any questions, we'll stick around for a couple more minutes.
Well, there was one of the agents said that they wrote up an offer, but it never got submitted because they realized that the buyer wasn't ready due to fear and needed more coaching.
So I'm gonna, with the 79 people still on this call here, Hal, I'm gonna say if anybody is in a situation where you have that buyer, I will personally, converse, meet with them if it's practical, or do a Zoom meeting and help you to complete a successful negotiation. And I think if you have a challenging buyer, and Dan, if it's yours, I'm putting it out there because I learned by, executing on the strategies that we talk about. Like, I like to say that we're not just academic here at Remax Select and our sister companies, that, I want to make a practical application to everything that we talk about here. And I believe in my core that we can do that. Relationships matter now more than ever. Okay. And it's not just the ability to have that relationship with a, stranger from Brooklyn, which I did on Sunday. But it's to create relationships with people in the marketplace that are controlling the listings. And I can honestly tell you that I believe every one of those 4 offers that we made communicated back to me. They were transparent. I felt like if there was a deal that could have been made, that they wanted to try to get something together. Because I was like, hey, these people, they've got all their paperwork into GNET, Finance of America. They're pre-approved. They're good to go. Everything was in place. And, we were prepared to win. Okay. So those relationships with the listing agents, not just the buyers and the lenders and the inspectors and the attorneys, but you need to sell the listing agent that you're a good deal.
Right.
And, we were on 2 of the offers that we got accepted, we were 9,000 below. One was accepted at 401. And they told me that they got an offer of 410 and they wanted to stick with ours. And the other one got one that was 426 when we were pressuring them to get out of attorney review. And the agent's like, look, this 30-day close already approved, go with it. So those things matter. And that's part of the winning attitude that you need to have in the competitive nature in this business. So if you
One other thing that I wanted to mention too is that 2 of my agents have told me when they won bids on properties, it was because when they submitted their offer, every document that was required was there in order in the same email. So the listing agent said to them, look, I know that you're on the ball here. I'm not going to have to chase after you for stuff. And I think that's really important, that, you don't submit offers that, you don't have the lead paint signed and you'll get back to them with that, or the seller's disclosure, you'll get back to them with that. That's not going to work. We need to make sure that the listing agent feels really good about wanting to do business with us because we're showing them that we're on the ball.
I would just want to add to that, Robert, real quick, and I know that we're short on time, but it goes back to this idea of really going deep in a market and being the hyper-local expert. It's all about relationships, right? You want to position yourself as the agent that everybody wants to work with, that they know that when they work with you, that your buyers are solid, that things get done, that everything is efficient. But the other thing, one of the biggest value adds right now that we can offer to buyers is finding off-market opportunities, which means we've got to be prospecting. And it's hard to do that all over the planet, which is why the teams that do have a geographic niche, I work closely with the Zamir team up in Fairlawn, which is the #1 agent team in the New Jersey MLS. And look, when you work with his buyer's agents, because they prospect in that town so hard, they know a half a dozen or 15 off-market opportunities. These aren't pocket listings. These are people that are not looking to sell their home right now. However, if a great opportunity came, they'd listen. And when you can provide that little black book of that information to your buyers as well, it's just, you can't do that across the whole state. There's just no way. You can do that in a niche. And I think that gives a value of being able to sort of give an opportunity for buyers to take a look at homes that are not on the market yet.
To that point, Hal, I told Rob about this yesterday or the day before, but one of my agents went door knocking with Rob, looking specifically for a property for a buyer that they had who was pre-qualified up to $1 million. And she actually found a property where the people said, okay, yeah, we're open to selling, and they're now under contract for $870,000. It was not a house that was listed, but just knocking and raising the question, would you be interested to? And they were. So that works.
So Robert, I'm going to conclude by saying, give me the opportunity to serve you guys and put 5 deals together, and I'll be transparent if I fail. But bring me those challenging buyers. Let's have a conversation. If it's convenient, I'll come in. If not, we'll do a Zoom meeting and we'll test the hypothesis. Okay, because I think that we can condition people to win. And I think that when they're sitting there on the 4th of July in their new house here in New Jersey, they're not going to be thinking about the ugliness of negotiating. They're just going to be appreciating the fact that they are in their new house, and they're going to be grateful and thankful. Yeah. And I also believe they're going to be referring our agent more business because we had the courage to give them that strategy and let them make the decision, and not impose our, like if we think the market might be overpriced or we think there's shadow inventory and it's going to fall, like that's, if you want to share that with them, that, hey, there may be this coming down the pipe, but there's probably more theories that the market's going to, continue its trajectory, maybe not at the same pace in the next year to two. None of us here has a crystal ball, and I think we just need to serve our clients with integrity and share with them what's there today.
Right. It's all about, being a consultant with integrity. I mean, it goes back to the same thing. Do you care about me? Can I trust you? And can you help me? It's no different than the relationship that we have with our clients.
Rob, I got one more question in the chat that I think we should address. And it says that offers well over asking where buyers are paying out of pocket for the difference between appraisal and the offer seems to be putting buyers in the negative equity. Is that not the case?
I disagree, because I think, for that point in time, that's the market. What do you think, Hal?
I agree. And look, if markets shift and value goes down, then it is. But, one of the things too is that most of the time residential real estate is a long-term hold. And it helps to buffer that a little bit. But I think that's a real legitimate conversation that I've had with buyers, that if you're going, 20% over the asking price, if your intention is to be out of this home in 3 years, that may not be the smartest move right now. But we talk about the pros and the cons, and at the end of the day, it's their decision in terms of their level of risk tolerance. But we've got to be the ones who have that conversation so they can make the decision that's best for themselves.
So last, I want to make a story-worthy experience for next Friday. All the managers, reach out to 3 of your agents that are struggling with this, and if they have anybody this weekend, encourage them to reach out to me. I really want to put this to the test and see if I can help people. I want to eliminate the fear and let them make the right decision. Yeah. I think that's the gist of it. And use every ounce of the relationships that we have, every strategy that we can pull out to see if we can put 5 people in homes this weekend that are struggling. So if you're a manager on the call here, reach out to some of your agents, say, the owner, the CEO of the company wants to get involved and help out. And I believe that we have the ability, if these people are motivated, to educate them, get them to make the right decision. I guess the history will tell us if this is true or not, but those of you managers on, reach out to 3 of your agents and put that offer out there. All right. I want to welcome you, Hal.
All right. Thank you, Rob.
This is exciting.
Guys, it's a pleasure meeting all you guys. Some of you I know already. Some of you I'm going to have the pleasure of getting to know you. And it's a real privilege to be part of this team.
Have a great weekend, everybody. Take care.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.